Hey guys, what's up? It is week 287, and you know what? It's been kind of a rough week. For the last few weeks, I've been fighting off bronchitis, on and off. Feel okay, then I feel worse. So I've been, a little out of it. This week, I don't have that much to review. And honestly, a lot of the titles are very, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 35 seconds, because although, they may interest some people, they didn't interest me very much, and there's just not very much to talk about in a lot of these movies. A lot of them are, a couple titles in one movie kind of releases, that kind of deal. So the first up is going to be the Aztec Mummy Collection by VCI. Now, this is parts 2, 3, and 4. Of a kind of a series. I wouldn't even say a loose series. I believe the first 3 are all together. We don't have the first one. I do not know why. There is a featurette on here talking about all the Mummy movies, so you can kind of hear an expert talk about it. But the first one I'm going to talk about, these are all going to be together too, because they're very, very similar. They all run together. I don't think that they're these movies that need a very detailed look at, for me personally. And the first one up is The Curse of the Aztec Mummy from 1957. Is this one? Black and white, 65 minutes or so, which is a perfect runtime for these movies. Now, if you guys have ever seen any of the Santo movies, which VCI put out a box set a while ago of eight Santo movies, I feel like the Santo movies are a little bit better. Now, when we talk about The Curse of the Aztec Mummy, this one has a huge, kind of like a flashback in it, which I imagine is from the first film. And we have this doctor who's he had found this Aztec treasure, and there's this villain and this doctor called the Bat, who wants the Aztec treasure for his own reasons, but there's also this kind of masked superhero that is going around helping the good doctor try to fight. And then eventually we actually see this character unmasked in this one, which is strange. You never, being so used to the Santo films, I never thought that we would see that. That was kind of an interesting point. But essentially a big chunk of this movie is our masked wrestler beating up these goons that the doctor has. And the goons are very much like your typical, cheesy mobster style guys. Some of the fight scenes are really awful in this movie, like the punching. It's very Batman, from the 60s. It's very much in that kind of vein. Very serial, very, TV friendly kind of stuff that you would check out on television. It's 100% that. It works perfect in that kind of Saturday morning. 2 or 3 of these on, or one of these on. Like, you watch the cartoons, you watch your Aztec Mummy movie or your Santo movie, and you move along. That's how it feels to me. And the runtime of 65 minutes is perfect for this type of thing. Unfortunately, all 3 of these movies suffer from the same problems. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of, the dubbing's not great, but that doesn't really matter. There's a lot of, wrestling and things like that, but it doesn't really have a lot of mummy action, which goes to prove that, it's very hard to make a great mummy movie. There's very rarely a great mummy movie. Maybe 1 or 2 great mummy movies. There's movies with mummies in them that are great, but they're not mummy movies. And The Curse of the Aztec Mummy is not one of the great mummy movies. And I wouldn't even barely call it a mummy movie. The focal point is the Aztec treasure and the mummy, but he's barely in the movie. The mummy actually looks kind of cool. He looks kind of terrifying, and he ends up, beating up a lot of the goons. And one of the goons actually gets some acid in his face, which I thought was a nice touch, something that was a little bit more extreme for this movie than you would expect. It's not a gratuitous, and none of these movies are very gratuitous, but it was fairly effective. So the fight scenes aren't great. The mummy is pretty cool. The Santo character is very strange in here because, he ain't Santo. Santo doesn't, he gets caught sometimes, but, Santo's usually going to save the day. He's not as tough as Santo. We're going to move on to the second part of this, and this is robots versus the Aztec Mummy. And this story picks up right where the first one left off. Same year, I believe. A lot of the same reoccurring characters. Now, our masked hero is no longer wearing a mask. He's just kind of helping go along. And the villain and Dr. Bat is still around as well. And some of his goons are there as well, which I thought was great. You really don't expect to see that kind of people come back. But this guy actually has the burnt face, which I was like, that's very cool. One thing that wasn't very cool is that there's a flashback to a flashback. So there's a lot of exposition. So they're doing the exposition dump on the last movie and the movie before that, and it's all of that, and you're just like, am I seeing a flashback of the flashback and all this exposition? Again, 65 minutes, perfect runtime. This time the Bat is trying to create an army of robots, and he needs the money from the Aztec treasure so he can make more robots, so he can kind of defeat everyone. And the robot is just kind of a guy, like a really funny, crude guy, and like this big box head thing, very silly, very ridiculous. And of course, The robot is going to fight the mummy. And that is actually a better fight scene, or at least more fun, at least more interesting, seeing a robot fight the mummy. Besides that, it's more of the same. The fighting in this one's not particularly great. Besides, it's a little bit better. I think this one's probably a little bit better made. All these movies are very repetitive. They're like, we got away, we got caught, we got away, we got a phone call, we got to go there, we got caught, we got away. It's very repetitive, very much. If you're looking for something a little bit more fun and crazy, watch a Santo movie. Watch the one where he takes on like 5, 6, 7 different monsters. They're just a little bit better. They're more interesting. They're just a bigger, better deal when it comes to these Mexican kind of wrestling horror films. But this one it was a little bit more interesting than the last one. You got that sci-fi flair, of course, and the cheesiness and all this kind of stuff.
A monstrous nightmare of terror turned loose in a fight to the death.
The robot versus the Aztec mummy.
They will bring you a night of terror. We dare you to see them, but don't come alone.
Okay, the last one in the set is the Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy. Okay, and this one was made in '64. So years later, years down the line, it stars a duo of wrestling women that were in a bunch of wrestling films. Now they wrestle a lot. The bad guy in this one is an Asian character, and he has like a sisters that are these judo experts. So there's going to be a big showdown between the tag team wrestling here. A very, very long scene. This one I feel like is a little bit better fighting. I think the fighting's better choreographed. Obviously, it makes sense because some of these people have had a lot of wrestling experience. I think it's better done. I think that it's a longer film, and it does get repetitive, people getting captured and people getting brainwashed, and it's very much the very typical kind of stuff you would see in these kind of movies. But there's an upgrade on the fighting. There's an upgrade probably on the acting, and the characters are a little bit more interesting, I guess, after seeing the same bunch from the last films. But all in all, this one, it's a little too long. It's a little too repetitive. And like the guy in the documentary says, talking about these movies, there's just not enough mummy action, and there never is enough mummy action in these movies. They saved the mummy for the last 20 minutes. Now I can't remember which mummy movie did it, if it was the second or third one, or even the first one, but the mummy will turn into a bat at times, which I thought was crazy because we're kind of mixing mythology here. It's very much a vampiric thing, but that's kind of cool that they do that. And there's a movie I watched recently, I can't think, it was from the Visual Vengeance, which kind of mixed the Chupacabra as a vampire. So I think that mixing these mythologies happens quite a bit, and it's happened since forever, mixing different mythologies for different monsters and different curses and all this kind of stuff. So again, we're, have the bad guy after the codexes, which will help him get the treasure, and they take a necklace off the mummy. He's not going to have that. We have an elaborate flashback on this one, which is very typical for the mummy movies, right? A lot of the Universals have the flashbacks of why, the mummy is very upset and who he's protecting and why and whatnot. So this, in a lot of ways, it's very typical in the Universal vein. In some ways, it's very different because there's a lot of fucking wrestling. So if this sounds like it's up your alley, if you want to just put these on in the background on a rainy Sunday and watch some, Mexican wrestling and some Aztec mummies, this might be for you. The quality was decent. There's subtitles. They're dubbed in English, and that's nice to actually have subtitles on a lot of these because they're not always there. But it's the 3-picture deal here. We got The Curse of the Aztec Mummy, Robot versus the Aztec Mummy, and Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy, and a little featurette on here, The Aztec Mummy Movies, a video essay by film historian Dr. David Wilt, and this guy knows a lot. He's on the Santo disc as well, and he does a good job. Unfortunately, we don't have the first one, and I'm pretty sure he explained probably why. Maybe it's owned by different, maybe it's lost. I don't know. I can't remember everything he said. But anyways, the Aztec Mummy Collection, if it sounds like it's up your alley, you like mummies, and you like weird wrestling movies, then you might like this. I can't give this like a wholehearted recommend or anything like that, as you can tell. But hey, it's good. 3 movies for probably a decent price, so check it out. Okay, now we have one of the double features from Dark Force, and this is Double Nickels and Between the Covers. Now, these double features are definitely something that I personally don't get super invested in unless it's like Psycho from Texas and City of the Living Dead. But a lot of these double features are really good to just kind of put on and kind of relax. Now, Double Nickels is definitely the A picture here. Now, we have here is, I believe they're like highway patrolmen, and like they get caught in this whole thing of, like basically stealing like cars for somebody, repoing cars, but then they realize that maybe they're not on the up and up. There's a lot of car chases, a lot of cars being stolen, and I think the director and the star of this, I believe he was the cinematographer on the original Gone in 60 Seconds, so he obviously kind of knew what he was doing. So the car chases are pretty well done. They're actually the best part of the film. The acting is iffy, you know, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of chase and skirt stuff going on too. It's not a great movie. It's kind of, you know, your run-of-the-mill drive-in B movie, but there's decent car chases, and it does have some note because we have the actor and the director here who worked on the original Gone in 60 Seconds, which is an interesting point. And, you know, it didn't look like he did all that much after this or before this, so it's just kind of like I really would kind of be interested more in the special features about this guy or somebody that knows a little bit about him. I know Mike Malloy probably would have done really well with that. He probably does some research, and he probably knows a lot about these kind of movies like this. I know he does the tough guy stuff, and this guy definitely is kind of a tough guy. So, yeah, and it's an okay movie. It's very much your typical drive-in fare for myself personally. Now, the second one, Between the Covers. Now, this one was a little bit, this is definitely a B picture. This is definitely not PG. It's funny, they put a PG movie and a rated X movie on here. Now, this is a dubbed one. I believe it's, is it a German film originally? Essentially, what we have here is a group of salesmen, and they're having this big meeting, and they're all trying to talk about how they sell their magazine subscriptions, yada, yada, yada. In the meanwhile, there's another boardroom happening, like another meeting, and there's naked girls dancing on the table. So there's, right off the bat, there's just a bunch of nudity, and all these board members are talking about how they sell magazine subscriptions. They all turn to sex stories, and there's like 15, there's like eight of them, and they're all weird and kinky and different and, you know, elaborate and softcore, and they go on for a very long time. And that's pretty much the gist of the movie. Some are silly, some are fun, some are weird, and at the very end we have a female who comes up and does her story. Now, of course, she sells the most magazines, yada, yada, yada. It's not exactly the most interesting movie. It's very repetitive, but hey, it is exactly what you would expect going through the drive-thru. You want to see as many sex scenes as you can. You want to see this stuff, and for that, it's exactly what you expect. It's exactly what it should be. For two movies on one disc, they look fairly solid. I think they did a decent job. Now you can watch this in drive-in mode as well. These are definitely movies for me that you kind of put on the background, and you know, just as they were in the drive-in, and you do what you got to do, you know, and then look up occasionally and check out what's happening. So that is a drive-in double feature of Double Nickels and Between the Covers. Now I could see Double Nickels actually bringing in some people that saw it in the drive-in. They're like, oh man, yeah, I like the racing and stuff. Definitely, for sure. And this one could be some interest to people too, Between the Covers. Okay, it is Italian Horror Month, and we are doing some Italian horror movies over at the 22 Shots of Moods and Horror. But before we jump into those, I wanted to check out Vinegar Syndrome's one of their new releases from October. This is 1988's Blood Delirium by the same director of In the Folds of the Flesh from 1970. Now, I've seen In the Folds of the Flesh a handful of times. It is one of the most bonkers, off-the-wall, weird-ass movies ever. And now, Blood Delirium, I put this in, I did not know what the fuck to expect. I noticed that John Philip Law is in there, who's an actor. He's in a bunch of stuff I've seen, Open Season and stuff, but he's an actor who doesn't really, I don't remember him very much. But I also know Gordon Mitchell is in here, and he was in one of those gothic, fantastical movies I watched for the Arrow set. He's in a slew of movies. I've seen Gordon Mitchell in so many freaking movies, and he's older in this, and this is a weird, perverse movie here. I almost want to just read the first couple sentences on the back to get you guys to know what you guys are getting yourselves into, because it's freaking wild. Like, here's what I saw. All I saw is, right when I looked at the back, I just saw, insists that his necrophilic butler, Herman, help remove his corpse from his cemetery. I was just like, right when I saw that, I was like, oh, I just glimpsed at it, and I was like, necrophilic butler, what the hell? Now, this reminded me immediately of something like Beyond the Darkness, the Joe D'Amato movie, you know, just in the terms of sleaze and weirdness and obsession. But it also reminded me of such kind of the tone of Paganini Horror by Luigi Cozzi, and that kind of weird, kind of late run Italian horror film that has that goofiness and that fantastical element and that haunting, but weirdness. It feels very strange. So what we have here is John Philip Law is a painter. He's an artist. He's great at it. His wife was a musician. She gets very sick. The butler is Gordon Mitchell. He's obsessed with the wife as well. She gets sick and dies, and at the same time, this woman that looks identical to the wife gets a phone call that says, I'm you from the future, I'm sending you a warning. So we get this strange premonition right off the bat. So our lead here that is still alive of the two ends up running in, gets this invitation to go to this kind of weird museum and see this guy's art pieces. She goes. Of course, right away, John Philip Law falls madly in love with her, must have her. whatever must possess her. And one day her car breaks down in that area, and she's kind of basically kidnapped and held against her will here. But Gordon Mitchell is this crazy Norman Bates style person where he has this strange room where he's kind of like embalming people, and it's very psycho-esque and whatnot, and he's killing women and raping them, and it's just really bonkers and weird and sleazy, and just the music is really solid, and the atmosphere is good, and the castle looks great. It's in a castle, by the way. This artist lives in a castle, of course, and it's just so crazy and weird, and it turns into your kind of style of A Bucket of Blood or Color Me Blood Red, right, where this artist has to have the right fucking ingredients, and everybody knows when a horror movie what ingredients the artist needs, and you know exactly what I'm saying here. So we get into that. Of course, people come looking for, and some people don't make it out of the castle either. Gordon Mitchell's intense. There really is a necrophilia scene, and I was just like, I can't believe this is happening in this movie. It's so trashy and weird and sleazy. It looks great. Vinegar Syndrome did an excellent job cleaning this bad boy up. I thought this was really entertaining. I thought this was really wild and weird, and I'm shocked I have never seen Blood Delirium. It kind of bummed me out. I was like, oh, I should have seen this one years back. I didn't get a chance to dive into the features. Like I said, I've been busy and kind of sick. But we have a brand new commentary track with film historians Eugenie Ercoladi, who does a bunch of stuff, and Troy Howarth, who I love. We have Gerard's Delirium, a brand new interview with actor Marco Di Stefano. Killer's Muse, a brand new interview with actress Bridget Christine. Once Upon a Time in Italy's 80s, a brand new interview with assistant director Corrado Colombo. Alternate Italian front and end titles. Yeah, this one's great. I really recommend checking it out. If you like the late 80s kind of Italian horror films, this is one of the better ones I've seen. And I won't go and say it's a hidden gem, it's a masterpiece, but to me, it was a very much a hidden gem. And it's better than a lot of the stuff that came out. To me, it's better than like Paganini horror. It's like, it's on the level of, Kazi's Black Cat, which I enjoy, like Demons 5 or 6, whichever fucking to Demons that is considered or whatever. But yeah, this one's a lot of fun, really recommended, and Vinegar Syndrome did a great job cleaning it up. Okay, the next one here, I'm going to be kind of brief with it. It's 1971. It's by the maestro Lucio Fulci, my second favorite director of all time, or horror director. And this is A Lizard in a Woman's Skin. Now, this is one of his gialli. His second gialli, I think, after Perversion Story, which is a good film. And this is his second film, I think, or second giallo in a row, gialli, starring John Cyril. He's a very handsome French actor. He's in stuff like A Fox with the Velvet Tail and Perversion Story, of course. This also has the wonderful actress Linda Balkan in it, who is wonderful, and she would go on to be in Fulci's next giallo, Don't Torture a Duckling, in one of her best performances, if not her best performance. So this is a strange film. This is a very unique kind of gialli, very different, I think. Right in the beginning, we have these kind of crazy nightmares for Linda Balkan's having these weird, sexy, like almost regression nightmares, and it's just really good stuff. Like a lot of people naked, a lot of weird visuals and everything like that. So you're like, oh wow, she's unhinged completely. And then we kind of find out that she's kind of obsessed with this neighbor next door, and Anita Ekberg, who's in a bunch of shit. You've seen her. It's Strangberg, not Ekberg. Sorry, Strangberg. She's an actress you've seen pop up. She's gorgeous. She's naked often in this, and eventually she's murdered. And she's had, and Florinda's had these nightmares about it, so she's very paranoid about it. Her father is very rich. He's a politician, so he doesn't like this at all. Her husband is John Surreal, and her husband is not on the level. So we have all these shady characters, and you start to think gaslighting story, or you start to think she lost her, her mental, bearings, and has she done this? So you kind of like are very confused by all this. And there's also these two hippies that kind of play into factor in here. So it's interesting the fact that we have, of course, the rich meets the kind of counterculture here, and she's kind of repressed. She doesn't want anything to do with that, but she's intermingled with it in her mind and probably in her everyday life. So there's a lot of gore set pieces. Well, there's a couple here. We have, of course, the dog by Rambaldi, Carlo Rambaldi, and Fulci would almost get in trouble for this dog because they thought it was real. Rambaldi would go on to do effects for, Possession and E.T. and a bunch of stuff. I think even Dune. I think he worked on David Lynch's Dune along with, De Rossi. So I believe so. So like the effects are really good. The bat effects not so good, but there's a lot of crazy things going on here, and eventually the reveal is very cool and very different because you don't see it coming. You could possibly pick the killer, but you maybe not pick the killer's motives. Mondo Macabre did a great job with this disc. I think this is a really good film. I think it's one of Fulci's most underrated films Visually, it's very good. Story-wise, it's very interesting as well. Now, I wonder who wrote this story. I really feel like it's got to be somebody of note. Hell, maybe it's Ernesto Gastaldi, but I think it's just a really, really good movie. I should mention, I forgot Stanley Baker's in this fucking thing, who's a fairly big actor. He's in a lot of British films, so that's a nice touch. So it's really well acted. It's really kind of A-list for a giallo, and I think it's one of Fulci's best, objectively. Maybe not a personal favorite, but top 10 for sure. I like the supernatural stuff he does and stuff, and I think Don't Torture a Duckling is my favorite giallo of his, and probably one of my all-time favorite movies. So, but this one is really strong, really different. The psychedelic aspects are really unique, and 1971 is a great year for this kind of stuff. So it runs a little long at an hour and 44 minutes, but I really recommend you guys check out A Lizard in a Woman's Skin. It's great stuff, and we'll talk about it more on the 22 Shots of Moods and Horror, because week 1 is Fulci. Okay, the Patreon pick this week, I can't remember who picked it. It is it's Eau Claire, and she picked What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Believe it or not, I have never seen the entire What's Eating Gilbert Grape in its entirety. It was always on television. I knew it had a very popular in 93, 94 when it came out, but I didn't see it. It was kind of like a huge buzz. A lot of people talked about it. It stars, of course, Johnny Depp, Leonardo DiCaprio, Julianne Lewis, John C. Reilly, Crispin Glover. I can't think of the actress who plays the cheating wife, but she's great as well. It's got a lot of familiar faces in here, so there we go. And it's strange for me to see Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio in the same movie together. I'm not gonna lie. You kind of forget that. Leonardo DiCaprio is very young in here, and he plays a mentally handicapped character, which obviously would probably be a no-no nowadays, but I think his performance is pretty well done. I don't think it's too over the top, and he does the right kind of level where at times you feel sorry for him, you want to take care of him, but he also drives the family crazy. So Johnny Depp is kind of stuck in this small town taking care of his family. He has 2 sisters and of course his mentally handicapped brother and his mother. The father's passed away. The mother is morbidly obese. She doesn't leave the house. She's just shut in. She's what do they call that? Agoraphobic. She never wants to leave the house, and so it makes things very tough. This movie does have a comedy streak to it, especially when we get to characters like John C. Reilly, but it's also kind of sad in a lot of ways. John C. Reilly is fantastic in this one, and you know what? Here's what it is. John C. Reilly steals the show in almost every movie he's in. He does a great job, and I'm starting to think, he's probably one of the greatest actors of my time, you know what I mean? Just like every time I see him, I'm like, he saved Skull Island. Without him, Skull Island is not watchable to me, and it has great actors like, John Goodman and Samuel Jackson in it. But John C. Reilly steals the fucking show over him. And here we have Leonardo DiCaprio and Johnny Depp, and when I come back to this movie, and I love Julianne Lewis too, you know who I see? I see John C. Reilly. You know who I focus on? John C. Reilly. You know who I laugh at? You know whose story arc I'm most interested in? Is O'Reilly. And we also have Crispin Glover, who is, the king of playing eccentric characters, because, he's probably really eccentric in real life. And it's funny, last week we talked about At Close Range with Crispin Glover, another strange performance by him. I've never seen him play a guy on the level. And this was funny, I say that because Johnny Depp's a actor who I never really see play too much on the level, but recently I've rewatched Nightmare on Elm Street and this, and I feel like he's most on the level in these movies. His narration is good. He's strong in this movie. Good performance. Everybody's really good in this, actually. I think everybody does a solid job. I think John C. Reilly steals the show with the burger stuff and him talking about this burger joint coming and eventually coming to fruition. But, the movie is sad. It is funny. It's got a lot of quirky characters, a lot of small town feels to it. And I think a lot of people love this movie for a good reason. I think it came out at a good time for people to check it out. And I think it's one of these ones that if you see it, you'll have a lot of sentimentality towards it. I don't have the sentimentality towards it, but I did enjoy it and I did like it. And it's an easy watch, with a lot of good actors and people in here. They're young and they're showing a lot of talent before they were huge stars or they're becoming huge stars in the process of it. So What's Eating Gilbert Grape? A good movie, interesting movie. I enjoyed it for sure. Hey guys, we're here for the Universal Horror, and this one's a little kind of off. I guess it's off the trail. A lot of people probably wouldn't cover this one when they're doing the Universal Horror movies, in quotations, because we did see a lot of thrillers, a lot of, fantastical, well, not necessarily horror films. I would say a couple were for sure. But this one is The Last Performance, which I feel like the title should be switched on here, kind of, from the last movie. Either or,
Yeah.
Either or could. And this stars Conrad Veidt. I'm not sure how you say his name. He's in The Hands of Orlok, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and of course, a couple that we already covered on here. He is in The Man Who Laughs, and what was the other one he was in? I can't think.
The Cat and the Canary?
The Cat. I know he wasn't in The Cat and the Canary.
Oh, he won?
I don't think he was. He was in another one though. That we did. Maybe the last. He wasn't in The Last Warning, was he?
I thought he was. I thought he was the same guy in Cat Canary.
He definitely could have been.
Man Who Laughs.
Yeah, he was in a handful, but the
yeah.
director of the Man Who Laughs did like 5 or 6 movies that we covered already, or a few. So yeah, this guy is actually a pretty prolific actor. He ended up being in Casablanca, which a couple of people pointed to my attention. He plays the bad guy in it. He's really good and really strong. Interesting life, you know. He fled with the Nazis with his wife in the with the late 40s, of course, made it into America cinema, and then he died shortly after. So, but he did tutor some other famous character actors. If you just read the letterbox, it kind of gives you a glimpse of it and everything like that. So this is the last performance. It's an hour long. It's short. It's a silent one, so it's relatively short. It's pretty fast paced. We kind of are introduced to pretty much 3 or 4 characters. There's a love triangle going on with Conrad, who is this big star named Eric, which is very funny, obviously, right? Keep Eric's off stage, like you said. And essentially, he has this love of his life, which is played by the actress from The Cat and the Canary and The Last Warning. And then kind of a tramp kind of wanders into their life. And Conrad takes kindness on him, and there's a love affair, but things get complicated when a performer kind of starts to meddle in their affairs, and pretty soon people end up dead, and we don't know who's at fault. There's a lot of kind of mysterious motives going on and weird faces, and yeah, that's pretty much the plot of the last performance. What'd you think?
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's simple, it's sweet. It's another movie. I feel it's like the 5th movie in a row we've watched that like takes place on a theater. It kind of like gives me like vibes of like The Mystic and vibes of the last one we watched,
The Last Warning.
The Last Warning. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody does fantastic. The assistant, I can't think of his name.
Buffo or something.
Yeah,
in the movie.
Buffo or something.
Buffo, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was great. I think he's kind of like coded as a gay character. Just
he's
the
very
way that he's
strange.
acting.
Like the way he intervenes, you wonder why he's intervening.
Right.
Even in like, is he in love with the tramp? Is he in love with Conrad? Is he just in love with the actress or the helper? So it's very strange.
Yeah.
Conrad steals the show.
Yeah, absolutely does.
And he kind of is like, you know, in the list of movies we started with Lon Chaney Sr. We're definitely moved into his phase where he had his few movies, and kind of we're going to start moving into like some of the bigger Universal titles after this,
Right.
and break into the non-silent films. But he was actually, I think this was his most subtle performance in a lot of ways, and really well done. Now he was in another movie we watched, and we were amazed how subtle he was when we compared it to The Man Who Laughs. So he's versatile, as versatile as a silent actor can be, right?
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's kind of a weird thing to say because they could be really versatile or really not versatile. I guess it all really depends. So like, there's a lot of moments when you really don't know his motives. You see him and he's like up to something. You're like, yeah, but who's he against here? What's he think? And it's just really well done. And I didn't. It's not that impossible to guess, but there's a couple outcomes you can guess, and motives. The motives are hard to guess exactly. So I kind of figured where it was going, but I did enjoy it, and I thought it was very straightforward and you know, easy to watch. Much easier than some of the other titles. It didn't waste your time.
I will say though that there was one thing about the movie where I was just kind of like, I'm surprised it didn't play a part. In his first performance, he like hypnotizes part of the crowd.
Yeah.
And I thought that hypnotism was going to come into effect like later on, like either with trying to get the girl to fall in love with him, or to get
I thought he hypnotized the helper to make him do something, right?
the helper, or even the you know, the court, like the last like 10-15 minutes takes place in court. So I it was weird that they introduced
Kind of a lost thing there. They could've
yeah,
done something for sure.
this hypnotism, and then it's like, we're going in a different direction. It's just murder.
It was nice to see the hypnotism and mysticism in here, because that around this time, I think a little earlier, we had that big kind of, in history, all those people like just ripping people off and stuff. And it's funny because you know who hated that? Harry Houdini couldn't stand that stuff, and he actually used to defraud all those people, to bug on and ruin their careers because they were lying, and he knew they were lying and stuff like that. So that's funny because he does kind of Harry Houdini stunts too, like these tricks. Not himself, but he does performances that are fake. While Houdini used to be an escape artist and do that stuff for real. So it's like kind of cool in that way to see this, but also, you know, you'll think of other things down the line like Wizard of Gore, where the guy will hypnotize the crowd, or even something like Nightmare Alley, more modern, but it's just a very common thing for the hypnotist to bring somebody on stage or just do something to the crowd. And he does a whole group of rich people, which seems like a very Shakespeare thing to do, to like make the rich people go nuts a little bit on stage. They feel like, oh yeah, we kind of lost her, that's fun, but then also the poor people can laugh at the rich people because Shakespeare, I don't know, I'm going to this, but it feels like something he would have done, right?
Yeah,
if he could control people. I liked it. I don't have all that much to say about it. Like I said, the performances are strong. Now the camera work and stuff like that isn't as elaborate as some of the other titles that we had seen. It's not as good as the guy who did like the movies that we watched before, like The Last Warning. I felt like he was stepping up his game and he had more money. I don't know the history of this movie. I don't know if maybe it was made before, not released after, because it looks cheaper. It looks more beat up. It's not as well preserved as some of the other titles we had watched. I do think this is a good movie. I think it's one of the ones that's easier to watch and entertaining. More of a thriller, a drama, but I would give it, a 7 out of 10.
I'd say 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
It's short, it's sweet. It's we did watch. I don't know if we watched like a Danish version.
It was a German, I believe. Yeah, this guy was a German actor, and I think the director was German. So like it had like different subtitles, and then like the English subs underneath. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it.
Oh, they were Danish subs for sure.
Well, a lot of these movies are lost in millions of different ways.
So
the
we
most
don't
complete
know.
Version. It's very hard to tell what's going on.
It's just like a complete movie. Maybe there was more hypnotism. It does seem short compared to like how long the prior ones we watched were. So yeah, but I mean it is a complete
to be honest.
Story.
It might not even be complete. A lot of these aren't complete. Like Nosferatu wasn't complete for a long time. Maybe even thought to be lost at times. Next week I'm very excited about, because we're going to dive into what I consider the first bona fide, no arguments Universal horror film, and that's Dracula 1931, directed by Todd Browning, starring Bela Lugosi. So that'll be very fun. And then we're going to watch Spanish Dracula, which I've never seen, which I'm excited to see. And then I think we go to a Paramount title. Then I think we hit up Frankenstein. So yeah, there's a few, Paramount acquired titles sprinkled throughout the list, stuff that was originally Paramount but Universal owned and bought later, and then they were put on the Universal tapes along with these later and re-releases and stuff like that, and played on television with them. So we're going to try to be as completist as we can with this. So yeah, Dracula's up next. That's when you never seen Dracula? Have you seen Dracula?
I haven't seen Dracula. I've seen Frankenstein.
Can't believe you've never seen Dracula. Now
I might have, but
yeah, shit, you don't remember everything.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm done. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into these questions, comments, concerns. Not too many this week. MyTube. I saw Martin Bull was in Ski Patrol. He went to college, needed money for art supplies, so did some stand-up and made a little extra cash. Ended up doing comedy and music and things like Roseanne, but he retired and is really good in my opinion. Artist and does showings, etc. It is why he disappeared. Settled in to just do his art. Thanks for your time. Always, Dave. Thank you. No, that's cool. I like Martin Mull's the best part of Ski Patrol, and he's great in Clue. I always enjoyed him. And what was the radio movie he did? I can't remember. FM? He's pretty good in that. Wildcock 23. At Close Range is one of the best movies ever made. I wouldn't disagree. I love it. And Nick Mua. I agree with you about VHS and anthologies in general. It's always a mixed bag, but there are some really good ones out there. Yes, I'm looking at you, Creepshow, and Amicus. Your deep dive into the 80s continued to amaze and delight me, but don't work too hard, because all work and no play, you know the rest. Questions. If you were making a new anthology, would you pick existing short stories or come up with the material yourself? I would definitely come up with the material myself. I would want it to come together and have some sort of overall theme. I think you said you like John Carpenter's music. Have you ever seen him perform live? No, I have not. Carpenter's one of the best, though. Everybody loves Carpenter's music. Again, the material, I might pick like all Lovecraft stories or something like that, but I would adapt them myself. Hope you have had a happy Halloween, though perhaps not with a silver shamrock mask. Or did you just hand those masks out to them kids on your lawn? Funny story, never get kids. I'm on a main road. One year I bought 2 boxes of full-size candy bars and small candies to hand out. Didn't have any kids. If one kid would have showed up at 7 o'clock, he would have got like $40 worth of candy. Tempo Tapas. If you want another movie with the bleakness and realism of Scum, I must recommend Nil by Mouth. It's the first and only movie ever directed by Gary Oldman, and it stars Ray Winstone as a working-class alcoholic husband. Apparently it is partially based on Oldman's own childhood. It's not over the top or sensationalized, but it still packs a punch. Ski Patrol reminds me of some of the other ski movie dumb comedies like Hot Dog the Movie and Ski School. What was it about the 80s, early 90s movies set at ski resorts? I guess they're all following the slobs versus snobs formula of Animal House and the sex comedy formula of Porky's. I would agree, yeah, and I've seen Hot Dog the movie, and I enjoy it with Dave Naughton. And here's what it is. Ski Patrol. doesn't have any of the sex comedy antics or over the topness or like, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this exploitation. So it's very just, it's a sex comedy without any of the sex. So it's very just not funny. There's nothing to offer. I know a lot of people don't like the sex comedies because they're dated, but it just doesn't really work. The comedy doesn't go far enough. Like, you know, I know a lot of people like Dodgeball, and I find it funny. So Dodgeball, you know, is a little bit more edgy than this, and this is like a PG, you know, snobs versus slobs kind of deal, and it doesn't have any of the sex comedy from the 80s either. It's 1990. It's just, I don't know its point of existence for Ski Patrol, to be honest. It's just not my thing. I see what you mean, though, for sure. Like, a Hot Dog, the movie I find fun. Ski School I never saw. But anyways, we're going to hop into the update. All right, a relatively quick update here. We have the Pact from Vinegar Syndrome's sub-label, Saturn's Core. Now, I like mostly what Saturn's Core is doing. They do some interesting stuff. I might have to stop buying some of them Wave production titles, I'll tell you that. I just don't know how many Gary Whitson movies I can buy. Yeah, but this one sounded pretty interesting anyways. And I'll try to buy all of them. But there might become a time, you know, where I have to bow out. Too many of those Wave titles. So now we have Cutter's Way by Fun City. Now I heard lots of great things about Cutter's Way, mostly from the Pure Cinema podcast. Brian Sauer and Elric Kane adore this movie. I mean, we got Jeff Bridges on the back there, and this is a nice slipcover. Fun City always does a really solid job. So I know it's a little dark. I think my lighting's a little too dark for this right now. I'll turn it up a little bit when we do the inserts here. Then we have Amityville the Curse. That's right. This is not exactly an official Amityville series, a lot of people say, but are any of them? Let's be honest. So, yeah, this was one that I definitely wanted on Blu-ray since we got the 2 different Amityville sets here. So, yeah, and I always remembered the cover art here. The original cover art had, like, the hanging outside the house, and I always remember that. I don't remember if I ever saw the Amityville Curse. This is from the Canadian company here, the Canadian sub-label. Then next, we have Vortex by Gaspar Noé, starring Dario Argento. I've heard a lot of good things about this. Life is a dream, isn't it? A dream within a dream. Oh, very cool cover how it opens there. Yeah, I'm very interested in checking this one out. Who did this sub-label? This is Utopia. Very cool. Gotta get Gaspar Noé's movies, and then it stars Dario Argento is very exciting, and the fact that Dario had directed a movie in Dark Glasses this year, which I really enjoyed, so that's all great stuff. I love seeing Dario do his thing. Then we have Moon of the Wolf from the Vinegar Syndrome archive collection. Now this is one I've never seen. Don't know much about it. Hopefully it's decent. Hopefully it's fun. Who knows? Who cares? Who cares? It's Moon of the Wolf. I gotta have it. So yeah, looks pretty cool. Is this 72? And I guess that's all for the update. Again, like I said, you know, money's been tight. Things are changing around, and, you know, it is what it is. So take care. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one. Me.